Welcome to Ask Dr. B. It is my highest intention to give you tools you can use that will motivate, activate, and elevate your life while helping transform the world we live in. We will touch on subjects that open gateways to radiant health, sustainable wealth, and limitless love. It's time to become goal-minded and uncover the treasure map already within you. Are you ready? Let's get deep. Welcome to Ask Dr. B. Right now, it's 11:11 on the phone. That means it's time to open up into the oneness of the universe, the omniverse. The universe is an orchestra. It's moving, it's vibrating, it's alive. There is no space. There's only now. There's only to now. And today, we're opening up brand new dimensions and we're going into the world of the no thing, which is everything. On the ride here today, I was energized and somebody brought me back from the dead. Are you ready to come back from the dead? Mathematics was always my challenge, but today there was a 15-minute ride of nothing but mathematics, which tied into my life of music, dealing with vibration, frequencies, and wow, it's deep. Billy Carson called me and he said, Dr. B, you're doing the Dr. B show. Huh? I was watching Star Trek Discovery. He says, you're coming. We're doing a show. And he says, your first show is going to be with Robert Grant. So who the heck is Robert Grant? Is he on Star Trek? He says, he is Star Trek. He's Captain Kirk. No joke. But anyway, it was beautiful to go to his IG and just check out the work that he's doing in the mathematics and the correlations between sound, vibration, and frequency. Everything is frequency. Everything is sound. Everything is music. Welcome to the world of music. So I would like to welcome to the show, Brother Billy Grant and Billy. You're not Billy Grant?
No, but we can combine and merge, you know.
That's my brother from another
Billy
mother.
Grant. You see what I'm saying? That's like Ray Wonder. You know what I'm saying? Billy Grant. But I'd like to welcome to the show, Robert Grant and Billy Carson.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I'm honored to be here at this particular moment, and our entire lives have brought us to this particular moment, this to now. So as we open up this vortex, listen and feel where you are, and let's look at where we're going. What's the next thing? What's happening? Are we at the end of this world or the beginning of a new world? So thank you for being here. It's good to finally meet you.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
Thank you, Brother Billy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great to be back.
So we're here to have a conversation. I know the show is called Ask Dr. B, but I got questions to ask you guys.
Okay.
So we're going to ask each other and have a conversation and just let this flow happen as we open up this spiral.
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
Sure thing.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. So first, I'd like to ask Billy, what brought this idea about?
Well, fortunately for me, I had met Robert Grant probably about 4 years ago, I believe it was, just through online. We kind of hit it off. We really resonated on the same frequency in terms of ideas, concepts, understandings about ancient civilizations, connections to mathematics between ancient sites and so forth and ancient temples. He had a lot of amazing discoveries that I really wanted to help bring forward to the world. His voice is already getting bigger and bigger by the moment, and I also want to be a part of the catalyst for his voice as well. And we hopped on a couple of podcasts. I hopped on his podcast. He came on my podcast. People really loved our information.
Yeah.
Like they're still talking about it till this very day. And then we did a workshop together, an online class where we taught about the mysteries and the secrets hidden in the pyramids. And at that time, that was a massive workshop, but only a fraction of what we've actually learned and what he's discovered back then. So much more has been gained. So much more knowledge has been gained. And I was like, how can we help consistently to build his voice and get his information out there in a way that we can edify the world? And so I said, man, Dr. B, frequency, vibration, music, multi-platinum producer, right? Robert Grant, mathematics, sacred geometry, philomath, right? How do we combine the two? The two really describe each other. His mathematics and his understanding of music is describing what you've basically made a living off of and what your passion has been all your life. Yes. It was a natural combination of the two. Yes. Yeah. And I said, this would be a great episode to talk about some of the new mysteries that Robert Grant has discovered in the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
Thanks, Billy.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about what you found. It's because this is the first time. Is this a new discovery?
Yeah. Actually, everything I'm going to talk about today is pretty much new. And I mean really new, only in the last month.
Oh, really?
So I just got back from an expedition to Egypt. We have these tours called Alpha Chi Omega tours. And every person that's selected for it interviews. It's a highly curated process to be able to come onto one of our trips. And we go for discovery. It's not to do a vacation tour, although we do have fun. I mean, it's definitely fun, but it's a different kind of fun because we're there literally like on an Indiana Jones expedition and hopefully uncovering secrets that have been left for us, hidden in plain sight. And right before leaving on this last trip, we discovered the geometric plan of the entire Giza Plateau.
Wow.
And guess what? It's all music.
It's all music. Really interesting. My first production company in 1982, we called it All Music. Little did I know that it was all music.
You could say the entire universe is all music.
It's all music. Right. We call it an orchestra, a ship. Wow.
So I think it's quite appropriate, actually, that I hadn't even talked to Billy about this, that we're doing this in the context of music and vibration, because that's exactly what I believe the core message of the Giza Plateau is all about. And it started off with, I've been studying the pyramids for 10 years, very, very in-depth. I mean, purely from a mathematical, geometric proportion perspective. And what I started noticing when you take a step back, because sometimes you're too close to the tree to see the forest, right? So you have to be able to take a step back and say, okay, what is the whole pyramid plateau telling us? Now, first of all, the original name of the Giza Plateau was Rostau. Rostau is just Taurus backwards. So the original name of the Great Pyramid was Bull Mountain. And the bull represents Osiris and the Apis bull. The Apis bull is the signification of the great bull of the West, which is Osiris. Right? And so I wanted to analyze what was left behind. Have you ever seen this television show? It's on Apple Plus right now called Foundation.
Yes.
It's an interesting show, right?
Pretty interesting.
And it's kind of really cool because it was written by Isaac Asimov. And it tells a story of an ancient civilization that was going through a down cycle, right, where there was going to be mass destruction, like a Kali Yuga, right? And so there was a mathematician who was a spiritualist, mathematician, highly respected, who used his mathematics work to predict, almost like astrologically, but even way more accurately, exactly what was going to happen to their culture.
Right.
And he predicted this massive downturn, that they would lose and everyone was going to die, and basically an apocalypse, right, that would destroy their entire civilization. So in order to safeguard the knowledge, and so that in 12,000 years, when the cycle comes back again, right, they had to come up with a method to encrypt and save all of the information of their culture and society in one geometric form. And they put it into a cuboctahedron.
That's right.
Right? And so that's the entire basis of the television show. They put all of their knowledge and information, compressed it into one cuboctahedral shape, which is a series of triangles and squares. Right? And it has 24 edges on it. And that this knowledge was going to be able to release higher consciousness as the people crawling out of the ashes of the apocalypse in the next cycle would be able to come back to and be able to have a fighting chance at a higher civilization again. And I believe that's exactly what the pyramids are.
Wow. So these are codes that were left behind to help us awaken after the deep sleep. Because I talk a lot about the 26,000 year calendar, the 24,000 year calendar, and how we went through this time where it was like struggle because we're so far from that. The angle has shifted to the point where, you know, we go through stress, we go through trauma, and there were these beings that came along, what they call prophets, to kind of guide us. But we're out of that now, and it's in us. And each of our cells are changing. Our vibration is changing as we speak. As long as we let go of our past trauma and, you know, what we think, because, you know, they always talk about how history repeats itself. You see, and I don't see anything in nature really repeating itself. So there are octaves and frequencies. And my favorite music and what I grew up on was jazz. Jazz was about improvisation. You set up a signature, right? A melody, and then everybody goes off and does their thing.
Improv.
And you might come back, but sometimes we didn't come back. You know? And I noticed that in jazz, it wasn't about looking at the audience. You're going inward. You're going into this place we call the idiom. You're in this space where there's nothing but your vibration and your feeling, and you're in this place where you are coming alive to yourself. So what I'd like to ask is where are we right now? As far as our evolution, are we changing? Is our DNA actually changing? I'd like to ask both of you that question. And where are we going? What's next?
I believe yes. And I believe we're at the beginning of the new cycle, which we often call the age of Aquarius. And this is a new cycle that will eventually culminate in a golden age as we get closer and closer to our sister star, Sirius A, and its partner also, Sirius B. Right now, we're 8.6 light years away from that, but we've just crossed over the vernal equinox back in 2012, which has been now 11 years right, since we've done that, or 10 and a half years. And we are solidly now into this new age. So everything seems upside down.
Yes.
We basically are seeing our society in massive upheaval today. And it just doesn't seem like the things that we grew up with, right, are holding true anymore.
Exactly.
Right? The things that we took for granted, we're realizing were not necessarily true all along, and that actually maybe what we had believed was our own conditioning biases of what we wanted to believe. Because we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are.
Yes.
And so what I started to do was to look at the clues left into the pyramid structures to see, because I had this deep-seated feeling that there was a story to be told, right? That there's an absolute story to be told. And so I started analyzing what you can find with the pyramid. So the thing with the structure is they're all still there, right? And we can figure out their base and their height and their slope angle. We could figure out these things. So I started looking to see if there was a pattern that I could figure out, right, related to this. And here's what I found. If you look at the Menkaure pyramid, which is the smallest of the three pyramids on the Giza Plateau, its height versus its base, 1/2 of its base, is 5/4 relationship. So 5/4, you might recognize that as a major third in Pythagorean tuning, right? So if I did the same analysis for Khafre pyramid, it comes out to be 4/3 relationship, right? So now we've got a perfect fourth relationship, right? Which then embedded within that, if I just take the 4, I cut it into 2, and I flip the inverse of the equation, becomes 3/2. That's the perfect fifth, which is the inverse of the perfect fourth. The Great Pyramid is the diminished fifth, and it's pi/2, or 2/pi, depending on which reference you're looking at. So now we have 5, 4, 3, 4, right? Or 5, 4, 3, 2, pi, 1, the undivided circle. So this is the tetractys. It's absolutely the tetractys, which is exactly what everything's been pointed to with the name of Yahweh. If you've studied anything in Esoterica, you'll know that Yahweh is a tetractys, the tetragrammaton. And it basically starts with, it depends on which type of triangle you're looking at. If you're looking at a triangle with an inverted triangle within it, then the separations of that with another inversion inside the center triangle would be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right? And then 4, 3, 2, 1. If you turn the 4, 3, 2, 1 version of the triangle, which has a hexagon inside of it, and then you have it into a Merkaba, you will have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Positional points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's exactly the pyramids of the Giza Plateau. And it's, the Great Pyramid is Mer, Khafre is Ka, and the Menkaure Pyramid is Ba.
That's right.
Merkaba.
Wow.
Right. So this is about the light body. So now we have 13 musical intervals. The 13 musical intervals are all represented within the basic proportional dimensions to perfection of the Giza Plateau pyramids. It's the rainbow body,
Wow.
spectrum of light and sound, which then stands to reason why the Great Pyramid has a latitude that's exactly the speed of light in meters per second. The latitude is 29.9792458 degrees north, and the longitude is 31.1342 degrees east. Now, if we take that and do a compass conversion on it, the way, if you look at it inside of Google Earth, you'll find that it's going to show you a number that's going to be 31 degrees, 8 minutes, and 3.1 seconds. Well, most people wouldn't recognize that that's actually 1/pi. It's exactly 1/pi. So the latitudinal reference is the speed of light, and the longitudinal reference is 1/pi.
Wow. Incredible. That's
To
not an
precision.
accident. That's not an accident.
That is not an
It's
accident.
not a coincidence.
And there's no coincidence, right? So, and then if I take 31.1342, which is the decimal conversion of that sexagesimal conversion, and I divide that by 360 degrees, it gives me 0.864. We have 86,400 seconds in a day. So that means that the latitudinal reference of the Great Pyramid is light.
Yep.
And the name of the Great Pyramid is fire in the middle, light in the middle, the mean of light.
Yes.
And the longitudinal reference of the same exact location is time.
Incredible.
Light and time.
Light and time. They called it Paya in ancient times. That's the fire in the middle. Yeah.
So what we're learning now is what has been encrypted in stone.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I started really going down this path in a major way when I discovered that Leonardo da Vinci went to Egypt. And it's a long story how I came to that. But basically, I found a letter that he wrote in this book, compendium of his works called the Codex Atlanticus. It's in reference 1336 and 1337. And what he talks about is working in an engagement for the Sultan of Cairo. So he actually did a job for the Sultan of Cairo. Now, Da Vinci always writes everything in backwards mirrored text. Whenever he doesn't write in backwards mirrored text, it means that there's an encryption there, generally. He's famous for being a cryptographer. And in those days, think about it. If you sent a letter to someone, it could easily get intercepted. So they had to, it was very common practice. Mary Queen of Scots was using it. They just decrypted one of her letters that was sent back and forth during the Elizabethan era. Right. And they just figured out what it was she was saying, right before she was sent to her death. But what's fascinating about this is that he encrypted it so well that even today, art historians looked at it and they thought this must be a fictional account. Because he talks about having worked for the Sultan of Cairo. And Sultan, at the time, the Sultan's name was Kite Bey. He was a Mamluk Sultan. Mamluk means bodyguard. So these were like the cousins, the kissing cousins, but not so much kissing, with the Ottoman Empire. They didn't get along well with the Ottoman Empire. So this was all part of a country called Syria at the time. So Egypt was encompassed within the Syrian Empire that was ruled by the Mamluk Sultans. And it just so happens that Sultan Kite Bey is the most famous sultan in the history of Egypt. Why? Because more than 250 buildings that stand today in Cairo were built by him and commissioned by him. He was very wealthy. He was very smart. He was known as a philosopher king. In fact, he wanted to build up Cairo into this beautiful, thriving metropolis that he hired many polymaths and Renaissance period scholars in the 1480s in particular. One of those was Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo writes about this in these reference letters that were draft letters that obviously were not sent, maybe in those days, and you can see there's a lot of cross-outs on it. So you would draft out your letter and then write the real letter, separately and send that letter. But the draft letter was kept. And it tells a story of how he visits Mount Taurus. Now, most people believe that this must be a reference to the Taurus Mountains in Turkey. And he says that for 3 years, he basically lived at the base of Mount Taurus to the east on the Euphrates River, described as Armenia, believed to be Armenia, and that the Euphrates had a city on it that was called Kalindra. Kalindra. So I searched high and low for this city, Kalindra, because I thought, well, first of all, this has to be not about a mountain in Turkey and Armenia, because why would the Syrians, who were the Mamluk Sultans, be surveying Ottoman Empire land? There's no way they would be allowed to do that. And why would you hire Leonardo da Vinci to do that? You wouldn't. You're going to use his brain for something. He was famous all throughout his life, as being like the smartest guy in the world. And so you have a real problem. Could be military, could be you want some incredible piece of art. You're going to commission like the smartest polymath in the world, So he tells a story about living in Kalindra, which is on the banks of the river Euphrates. Now, I looked all over. I even brought in some Turkish scholars and Armenian scholars at universities to see if there was ever a city in Turkey or Armenia with the name of Kalindra. Now, where does Kalindra come from? It sounds a lot like another word we use every day, calendar. It actually derives etymologically from Kali, dragon. The Ouroboros.
Yeah.
Kali, dragon. Kalindra.
That's the circle. And
that's
it looks
right.
like it's eating itself.
The cycle of time.
Exactly.
The 25,920 year cycle, which is actually 24,000 years, because as we get closer to Sirius A, we speed up.
That's right.
Just like this. Have you seen that? Like
yes.
a slingshot?
You have to speed up and create breakaway speed.
That's right.
In that orbit.
So the far cycle, is 12,960 years. The short cycle is 10,800 years. So when you combine those two cycles together, they add up to, the average is 24,000 years, just under 24,000 years. Yeah. And it's just because of time dilation.
Yes.
As we get closer to Sirius A, our gravitational experience becomes stronger, right?
Yes.
So basically speeds up our time from that perspective, right? Just like if you saw the movie Interstellar, when they landed on that planet next to the black hole called Gargantuan, and this was basically theorized and put together entirely, obviously with special and general relativity principles in mind, but it was Kip Thorne, the physicist at UCI, who basically won a Nobel Prize, who helped consult on that film.
That's right.
Right. So basically, they were on the planet for like 45 minutes, and yet 23 years had passed on the ship.
Exactly.
Right. This is mass time dilation. Right.
Yes.
So we go through the same thing. So it's a 24,000 year cycle, just like the Kali Yugas and just like, you know, the Vedic mathematicians from India have talked about for so long.
Yeah.
So basically, you have Da Vinci now talking about living east of the great Mount Taurus, which some have believed to be Mount Ararat, but the Euphrates doesn't even go through there.
Right.
Now, what were the two most famous rivers in the world at that time?
The Nile
And the Euphrates.
and the Euphrates.
Tigris Euphrates is the Fertile Crescent, right? So the Euphrates River was obviously a critically important river in the history of the Middle East at that time, but the Nile is very, very significant because everybody knows the seat of civilization that happened along the Nile River. It was also the largest river in the world. It was known at the time. So basically, what he was talking about was being in a city close to where Cairo is. Right? In fact, it's Old Cairo. Guess what the name of Old Cairo is today?
What is it?
Calendar.
Wow.
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 Mahdi.
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 Mahdi. Now, in the center of Mahdi is a place called Babylon. Because actually the letter was written by Da Vinci to the Devatdar of the Sultan, or the Devatdar of the Lieutenant of the Sultan of Cairo.
Okay.
Cairo, Babylon. Now, why was it named Babylon? Well, there's a section of Cairo today called Babylon. Why? Well, Alexander the Great called it that because it was basically Babylon of the West. Okay, it was a seat of learning. Babi is from a baboon.
Right.
One of the symbols of Thoth is a baboon.
Baboon. That's right.
Right. That's what the Babylon comes from. Right. So the libraries at Alexandria, all of this is closely tied to this. It's basically this notion that you're achieving a higher level of sophistication in society and culture.
Right.
Learning, right, basically is winning over might makes right. And these were the high ideals of people that were there at that time, right? And you have to look at the history of Egypt. It was always closely tied in with Greece.
Yeah.
Always. I mean, it's not that far away.
No.
It's very close. It was always closely tied with Greece. And that's probably a legacy holdover from Atlantis.
Absolutely.
As well.
No doubt.
And the Greek language is probably one of the closest that etymologically exists as a root cognate form of Atlantean.
Yeah.
Right? So basically, that's why you find Easter Islands language very similar to Greek.
Right. Absolutely.
Very similar to Greek.
Yeah. Very similar to runes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what we find then is there's this town in the center of Cairo called Calendar. It's exactly east of the Great Pyramid, the Great Mount Taurus. And with that, Da Vinci describes, and it's only a walk of a few minutes away from Babylon, which is where the letter was written to.
Wow.
Right, I only discovered this a few weeks ago.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so this was like rock solid evidence for me that the story is really about the Giza Plateau. And it actually tells a story of the Last Supper as well. Because when Jesus was a small child, the Herod basically sent out a proclamation that we all read about at Christmas time, right? Sent out the proclamation to basically kill the firstborn male children, right? Because he was worried about the prophecy.
Right.
During that time, Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt.
That's right.
They went to Mahdi. This is Old Cairo today.
Yeah.
And in the center of Old Cairo is the first Coptic church cathedral.
That's right.
And guess what the name of that cathedral is?
What's that?
The Cathedral of St. George, who defeated the dragons. Kalindra.
Yeah. Wow. And I've been
Literally
there.
That's deep.
in Mahdi.
Yeah.
So St. George of the dragons. Now the dragon of time.
Yes.
The Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes.
So, and it was in the story that actually happened in North Africa. It was supposed to be in Libya. The story of St. George defeating the dragons is a story that exists today still, and that's why this cathedral is built there.
Right.
It's a story where there was a dragon in the town area, right? It was in the caves outside the town, and they had to sacrifice their lambs to the dragon. And then when they ran out of lambs, then they had to draw lots for their daughters.
Wow.
So the daughter of the king drew the lot.
Yeah.
Unlucky. So she's going to have to be sacrificed to the dragon.
Crazy.
So St. George, riding by on his trusty steed, says, "Oh, I'm going to save the damsel in distress." And he basically goes in and figures out how to tame the dragon.
Yeah.
Then he takes the dragon. He's almost got it on a leash. He brings it into town. He says, "Okay, all of you have to convert to Christianity.
Right.
And if you do, then I'll basically defeat the dragon.
Yeah.
And you'll never have to worry about the dragon again."
Yeah.
So there was a mass conversion. They all converted because this dragon had been a menace for them. And he cuts off the head of the dragon. Breaks the cycle of time.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the very same spot where Da Vinci was is where this cathedral is today that commemorates that occurrence that happened in North Africa as well. So I was fascinated by this because in his letter, he talks about not only surveying the Great Mount Taurus, and he speaks of it as a structure. Yeah. I would never speak of a natural mountain as a structure.
Right, no.
Right? He speaks of a cavern inside of it that we believe is the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
In fact, Da Vinci leaves behind in 1487 the Vitruvian Man. The Vitruvian Man has horizontal lines. If you look closely at the illustration of Vitruvian Man,
Yes.
has horizontal lines at the knees, at the groin, right? And then you've got where the belly button is, because right in the center of where the circle is, right? And then there's this contrast between the center of the square and the center of the circle. The center of the square is at the groin. The center of the circle is at the navel. And then what we found is that when we overlay the pyramid on top of that, everywhere where he drew horizontal lines matches exactly the location of each of the chambers inside the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
Even the ones at the knees are matching the Osirian shaft.
Wow.
So I've shared this now, and I have a television show on this called Code X on Gaia. And the Egyptian authorities are aware of this as well. And they're actually now starting to work with me on this. Because Da Vinci predicts that at the next chamber would be at the throat of the man. When you overlay the pyramid on it, that's exactly where the next chamber is believed to be. It's been found on ground penetrating radar.
Yeah.
And actually, it's on the cover of my book here. You'll see here this line that cuts across.
Yes.
That horizontal line was made by Da Vinci, telling us where each of the next chambers are. That means that there's not only one there, but there's one where the pineal gland is, where the eyebrow is, there's a line there, and then there's one at the top of the head of the crown.
The crown.
So the chambers represent the chakras.
Yeah.
And we're looking at right now, like yesterday we were working with an audience, and we noticed everybody in there had a throat issue, which has to do with being able to communicate well.
Yeah.
Energy coming down through the top from the cosmos has to be transformed into physical energy through the throat, and then into the body, and then physical energy coming up goes through the throat again for transformation. And we notice a lot of people going through issues of being able to communicate.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest problems we have is communication. How to speak and what are you really thinking? What do you really feel? And now like the internet, everybody's talking. Everybody's got something deep to say. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this whole thing.
We're like in a new age of philosophy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone's philosophizing.
Yes.
which is interesting. People like Jordan Peterson would have never come to the public consciousness to the degree that he has, or Joe Rogan. These are modern day philosophers.
Right.
Yes.
And we're valuing it now.
Right.
20, 30 years ago, nobody valued that.
No.
Right? We were in an age of human doing. We're now in an age of human being.
Being.
Yeah. Right.
Being.
So the throat chakra has 3 layers within it. The first layer of the throat chakra is self-awareness. Most people don't even actually get to the point where they're truly self-aware,
That's right.
because they believe that the world around them is totally separate from them and they have nothing to do with it. Remember, the universe is more like a U-inverse. It's like an iceberg that believes it's separate. The part of the iceberg maybe is a sentient part and conscious. And then the part under the iceberg is perceived by the iceberg that's above the water as being totally separate. But what if the entire world around the upper part of the iceberg is actually just a projection of what is inside the iceberg but underwater?
Yes.
And that becomes its reality.
Right.
Literally, it's day-to-day reality, how it perceives everything, because we can't separate our lens of bias from our experience every day.
Right.
But the path of geometry, the path of polymathy takes you down this path of being able to step into other perspectives, see other viewpoints. You don't necessarily have to agree with them, but you have to acknowledge that there are different ways of seeing the same thing. So that maybe the only truth, the objective truth, would be the sum of all possible perspectives.
Yeah. Superposition.
It's superposition.
Exactly.
And that is, as mankind ascends to this higher level, we start to transcend, and we go from self-aware to self-actualize. So the next layer of the throat chakra is self-actualization. That's manifestors like this guy.
Yes.
I mean, we're just sitting here, all of a sudden someone knocks on the door and like delivers him money.
Hands of money.
Hands of money. It's like, he
stack
goes,
of
I
money.
didn't know what that's for. It's just like, put it down. I'm like, that's for your next watch.
He didn't even ask the lady what it was for. He just grabbed the money and said,
I know.
He's got a stack of money. People
Totally.
just bringing money to
I
the
just
door.
bring people just delivering money. It's like, that's some manifesting stuff right there. I'm impressed. So the next layer beyond that, beyond the ability to manifest, but that's that's generally associated with time. So let's say that we're on a continuum, an XY axis, and if you had perfect faith, what you think in a conscious way with conscious intention actually could manifest immediately.
Yes.
But your level of self-doubt determines the timeline that it requires for that manifestation to occur.
Exactly.
Right? So we tend to look at things and we're like, oh, I had this thought in my mind all along. It just took many years for the arc of that cycle to complete.
Yes.
Well, what if you could actually pull it all into the now?
Right.
Yes.
Well, that's the next layer.
Right.
It's self-aware becomes self-actualized. Self-actualized is based on time as an associative relationship between your level of disbelief and self-doubt.
Exactly.
People complain a lot, we all do, about how the world happened to us.
Exactly.
Right? But what if the universe is really happening for you to have realizations?
Right.
And what if all the things you chose to learn in this creatrix of mind,
I like that with creatrix.
what if all the things that you chose to learn are just manifestations that come back to you in a cyclic pattern until you realize it and you learn through their opposites?
Right.
So if I'm here to learn unconditional love, then I must experience the opposite or conditional love.
Yes.
Maybe the most extreme form of that is betrayal.
Yeah.
Until I finally realize that that's what I chose to learn. We learn through the opposites. You cannot know pleasure without experiencing pain.
Right.
Yes.
And the higher degree that we experience its opposite, the closer we come to learning that principle, that thing. And it's a very beautiful thing. Actually, if we look at the Giza Plateau and these musical intervals, right? So we have the major third, which is the Menkaure Pyramid, the perfect fourth and fifth, which is the Khafre Pyramid, and the diminished fifth, right? And the augmented fourth is the Great Pyramid, because it's the unfinished man. Within its imperfection, and that's why there's no top on it. I don't believe there was ever a top on it. I believe we are the top.
Wow.
And because you think about it, the thing was 26 feet high and 42 feet at its base. That's going to weigh thousands and thousands of tons.
Yeah.
How are you going to get that off?
Right.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said somebody stole it, right?
Yeah, you know what? If they could do it, they deserve it. That's what I got to say.
They ran off with it in the
That's
middle
right.
of the
He
night.
ran off in the middle of the night. It's 481 feet high, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, right.
But the point is that within each thing, as I started looking at it, I was once asked not long ago by Donald Hoffman, who's a mathematician and a psychologist and neuroscientist at UCI. And he came to meet with me and he said, I've got a question for you. Can you figure out a way to mathematically derive an equation for human emotions? I'm like, damn, I don't think I've ever been asked a question like that before. I said, let me sit with that one for a while.
Yeah.
I was flying to Salzburg, which is one of the music capitals of the world,
Yeah.
right? The birthplace of Mozart. And it hit me on the flight over. The one thing that brings and induces emotions to me without any issue whatsoever is music.
Music.
That's right. And
Music.
that's all math.
And I realized that certain tones and certain interval relationships cause me to feel certain ways.
Yeah.
They can induce memories, they can induce emotion. Like some people experience it through smell, but that's just another form of looking at frequency.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And so I started looking at it saying, wait a minute. So the major third, that da, 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 and then the perfect fifth, da, 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 so it'd be da, da, da. It's a perfect fifth relationship, right? That this basis is so beautiful. It's based on all geometry. I explained it to you in the car on the way over.
Yes.
Which is if you take the sum of angles of a square, it's 360 degrees.
Right.
3 plus 6 plus 0 equals 9. You take the next up, which would be a pentagon, 540 degrees is the sum of its angles. Its interior angle is 108 degrees times 5, 540. 5 plus 4 plus 0 equals 9. Then you go up to the next, which is going to be a hexagon, 720 degrees. 7 plus 2 plus 0 equals 9. And then we go up to a seven-sided object, which is called a heptagon. It's got 900 degrees. There's your 9 again. And then an octagon is 1,080 degrees. 1 plus 0 plus 8 plus 0 equals 9. Is this true for all polygonal forms as well as all polyhedra?
Right.
And the answer is yes. There's not a single geometric form that's regular that doesn't sum to the number 9.
Yeah.
Wow.
So geometry is the music we experience and we see it with our eyes. And what's beautiful about
Did you
that
say
is
that again?
geometry is the music that we see with our eyes.
Wow. That's
That
huge.
means that music is the geometry that we hear with our
Exactly.
ears.
Yes.
It's the inverse.
Right? And good smelling stuff,
Yes.
right? And maybe bad stuff too, is the music we experience with our noses, our olfactory sense.
Yeah.
So we're just all wave-based energy beings that are taking in all these different levels of frequency through our different senses. And then the stuff we can't sense with our 5 senses, that's what we have a pineal gland for.
Exactly.
For everything else.
Yeah.
So now when you look at it, and what if I made a direct conversion on each of those exact polygons? Square, pentagon. So I'm looking at a square, pentagon, hexagon, heptagon, octagon, right? Nonagon.
Yeah.
What if I did a direct conversion on those from angles of degrees into Hertz frequency, which is cycles per second?
Right.
Guess what I have? An F sharp major chord in 5-part harmony. The most beautiful sound in music.
Yes.
The geometry is an F sharp major chord.
Wow.
That's deep.
Wow.
It's really deep. So what we're experiencing as light is also sound. Because for us to see it, we have to see it in form of light.
Yeah, exactly.
So light and sound are the same thing. There's just a conversion factor that's happening between the two. It's the latitude and longitude of the Great Pyramid. One, sound is carrying sound waves, phonons,
Right.
carry mass.
Right.
So we literally have light and sound at this axis of X and Y. That's what it is.
Yeah.
They're not separate.
This is why I believe in string theory. Just
Yes.
because, as above, so below. So, in string theory, theoretical physicists hypothesize that there are these vibrating strings that are vibrating throughout, the universe in multiple dimensions, which help to emanate some of this reality into existence. And so I tend to believe that everything is vibrating. We know that in this dimension, atoms vibrate. And it's really, unless you go through a very artificial process, it's almost impossible to get anything to be completely still. You can't even make it cold enough to stop the vibration unless you go through an artificial process. So vibration, everything is vibrating, everything is moving.
Everything.
Yeah.
It's like a giant piano keyboard.
Exactly. We talked about that yesterday, right?
Yes.
So what if we took a piano keyboard, has 88 keys, and we took it starting off from 1 cycle per second, and even you could do fractions because it has to be as above, so below.
Yes.
It's going to be infinite in both directions.
Exactly.
But let's say we start at the scale of 1 hertz. The first audible sound we can hear is at 27 hertz. Pythagoras discovered that. He posited that. The highest we can hear, unless you've got some canine like genes somehow, is about 20,000 hertz.
Yes.
Okay. So everything in that spectrum is what we experience with our ears.
Yeah.
Right. And we can also feel it because we can feel the vibration of it.
Right.
You sit next to, a gangbanger on the main strip of your local town, you'll hear it with boom, boom, boom. You'll definitely feel it.
The 808.
Right? Exactly, 808. So what we're doing is we could take that exact same thing and take it up just like a piano keyboard. The 34th key on a piano keyboard is F. The 55th key is G because that's the phi ratio of 89. 89 would be the beginning of the next meta octave, right, of an entire piano keyboard. So now we've got Fibonacci numbers. Fibonacci numbers are 1, 1, 2, 3, 5,
Now we're
8,
creating a spiral.
13. We're creating a spiral.
The golden mean.
That's right. So the old way they used to draw, we look at treble clef. The treble clef used to just be a symbol. If you look in the 13th, 14th, 15th centuries, they had a staff of music with a phi symbol. It wasn't G. That's a G shape, by the way, this whole treble clef thing that we do, right?
Yeah.
And then we have the F clef, which is also a Fibonacci spiral.
Exactly.
The way it's done with 2 dots
Right.
Yes.
on the side of it. So those are the phi relationship of the bass clef and the treble clef. It's exactly golden ratio. So then if we take up to the 55th note and we then zoom out and the whole piano keyboard becomes 1 note on a piano keyboard, a giant piano keyboard, then we've got the entire electromagnetic spectrum is 88 keys. The 55th key is the 1 octave of visible light.
That's
Wow.
it. And humans only can see 1% of visible light. So, we're talking about a direct correlation between our physical reality or the illusion of our physical reality as it relates to vibration and frequency.
Which is really cool because if you think about it like this, the intervals. So when I looked at the major third for Menkaure Pyramid, from one perspective, I could see it as a major third, which has been reported in scientific studies as inducing feelings of love and romanticism.
Wow.
But the opposite always has to sum to 9. So if you got a major third, then you have to flip the major. It's like a polarity. Major is like positive, right?
Yeah,
charge. Negative charge would be minor. So you've got major flips to minor, and then the 2 have to sum to 9. So that means that the inverse of the major third is the minor 6th.
Yes.
Because 6 plus 3 equals 9.
Yeah.
So the major 2nd has an inverse of a minor 7th. Right, and so on. So now, if you ask people how they feel when they listen to a minor 6th, heartbreak.
Yes.
Yes.
So romantic love, viewed from one perspective, and they're the same notes, by the way, the exact same notes. The only difference is you're going from C, middle C, to E,
Right.
Yes.
right, a few notes above it, or high C down to E, just played in opposite order.
Yeah.
And that becomes a minor, which is heartbreak, and the other is major, which is romantic love.
Wow.
So, and the only thing that's determining the difference between the 2 is time.
Wow.
So that means that in the experience of love is the seed of heartbreak.
Right.
And this is true for all emotions. So you now can look at the Giza Plateau because it's the entire rainbow spectrum of light and sound as human emotion. And these are mathematical intervals.
Wow.
So every experience that we have
Yes.
is housing both. Cafe Pyramid is super holy because it's the one that's built on the perfect 4th and the perfect 5th. There's no minor associated with it. But the Great Pyramid is diminished 5th and the augmented 4th, which is like this devilish sound.
Right.
Because Osiris must be redeemed and resurrected. He must rise from being the scorpion, the snake, The Scorpio is the only sign of the zodiac that goes through this cycle of transformation and transmutation and eventually becomes the feathered serpent.
Yeah.
Wow.
The rise of the Kundalini force,
Yes.
life force. So what we're looking at on the Giza Plateau is musical interval. And that's why we love it, because it's so enigmatic. It's an entire rainbow spectrum for us to experience. And so is life.
Yeah.
We're here because we choose to be here. We're here because we want to learn certain things, and we're going to experience those things. The universe doesn't happen to us, it happens for us if we will but see it as that.
Yes.
And then everything becomes miracle based. This is part of going into the zone of self-transcendence. You're no longer at the highest level of the throat chakra activation, which is what everyone's going through right now. People are all, I've got a sore throat right now. We're all going through different layers. Each one is like another note, peeling back. So within, you talk about string theory. It's like a giant piano keyboard. You've got 12 notes in an octave. The 13th note becomes the next Fibonacci number, starts the next cycle.
Right.
It's the next octave.
That's right.
The entire Giza Plateau, if you take and make a rectangle, we're about to publish all this. I was going to talk about it today, but I'll tell you a little bit about it.
Okay.
The entire plan of the Giza Plateau, the upper, so if you're looking at it from the top, you'll notice that, of course, the position, just like the Teotihuacan Plateau, which is also Tehuti.
Tehuti, right.
If you look at this, it matches the shape of Orion's belt. Right? It's a little bit off because of our position.
Right.
It's a tiny bit off for the center star, for where Caffrey is, but the other two are right on.
They're right on spot. Right on
It's
point.
not. It's like minutely off too, which people make a lot of noise about, but it's most definitely Orion's belt.
Yeah.
So when you realize this and you take a rectangle from the upper right corner of the Great Pyramid and then the lower left corner of Menkaure Pyramid, looking at it from an aerial view perspective, it creates a rectangle.
Yeah.
This rectangle has a perfect relationship in it, which is 432 on one side and 528 on the other.
Golden ratio.
It's not golden. It's 1 point. Well, it does relate to golden ratio because it's 222.
Okay.
So 1.22222, right, is the relationship. And 222 degrees divided by 360 is 0.618.
Okay.
So it is golden from that perspective.
Right.
But actually what it's telling us is something a little bit different. It's giving us 2 full octaves of these musical intervals, because the 2 full octaves of musical intervals will give you 24 intervals, not 26. It gives you 24. So the relationship becomes 25 over 24, which is basically a 25 over 24 is 1.0417. It's basically 0.0417 is 1 over 24, right? So 25 over 24 relationship is giving us the second in music. Now, why is that important? Because it's about doubling the octave.
Right.
It's all about doubling the octave. How do we take our frequency to the next level?
Transcendence.
And through transcendence. Exactly. This is all about the doubling of the octave. Now, what I also discovered was that, who built the Great Pyramid?
Thoth, the Atlantean.
Thoth, the Atlantean. And now we can prove it. Because the only way that you can derive the perfect ratio, in Greece, they had this whole thing where you had to square the circle. I wrote a book about this, right? Polymath and philomath are both about learning how to overcome the impossible problems. And these were not really Greek problems, right? These were things that the Greeks learned in Egypt, but they also played a role in it. Now, a lot of people get upset, and I see this all the time. They're like, why didn't they ever credit the Egyptian teachers that they had? Well, because they were called mystery schools for a reason.
Exactly.
It's a
That's what I
mystery.
keep trying to tell people.
It's like it's
Mystery
a
means no
These-
tongue, no thought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These were
and
adept
can't explain
initiates that were handpicked.
Yeah, they're not supposed to talk about that.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole thing.
The origins
And
of
by the
secret
way,
society.
look what happened. If you really wonder about this, look what happened to Hypatia, who was the most famous female mathematician. She was raped
Yeah.
in her city by Christian zealots,
That's right.
Coptics,
That's right.
some of which were her students that thought she was a witch. These people were practicing magic, ceremonial and ritual magic. These people were at another level. They're in the 5th dimension. The 5th dimension,
Fifth dimension.
the 5th chakra
That's right.
is the magic. So magic manifestation is now available to humanity,
Right.
Yes.
where every moment can be a miracle. Carl Jung said, the number of synchronicities we register will be a great way for us to be able to track our progression of spirituality.
Yeah.
As we get to individuation. Now, individuation doesn't mean we're returning into a hive mind. It means that we are perfectly embodied in our individuality. We spend our whole lives wanting to be like other people, right?
Yes.
Until we get older, and then we kind of get to that stage of, I don't give a shit no more.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There's something about, he's like 2 billion years old, but you know, he's figured this out a long time ago. But the truth is, I suffered that too. As a small child, I experienced separation. Right? Look at the metaphors all around us.
Yeah.
The year I was born was 1969. Flower power. 2 months after I was born, we land on the moon. Right? And what was the name of the mission? Apollo. The sun god goes to Diana Artemis, which is the moon.
The moon.
We look up in the sky, the moon and the sun are the exact same size.
Yes.
This is why we have a perfect eclipse. You know the mathematical probability that we would have that with our one moon?
Doesn't exist.
It's impossible.
It doesn't exist.
For that to happen, the moon has to be exactly 400 times closer than the sun is from Earth.
Right.
And has to have a diameter that's exactly 400 times smaller than the diameter of the sun, which, by the way, it is. It's 2,160 miles. And the sun's diameter is 864,000 miles. It's 400 times, exactly. 93 million miles is the distance, and that's 400 times. The distance from Earth to the moon is 232,000 average miles. You have to look at the farthest distance from the closest distance and take the mean value to get that. And it's 400x. So, wait a minute, are we living in some simulation? Yes. And who created it? You did. You did.
It's very interesting because I often talk about becoming the indivisible individual because we've been divided. I almost think that in the beginning, maybe we should have learned division and subtraction. So, because when we're working with art, it's about taking away. If you're working with a clay, you know, you're making this beautiful piece. You're cutting away what you no longer desire.
Exactly.
So in life, if we look at it as well, we're going through challenges, but we're becoming the diamond. So that oil has to become coal, and it's the heat and it's the pressure, which they call now is trauma, you know, and drama.
Right.
You know, you've got to go through that to get to this place and create the alchemy. That's the calcination, burning off all the things that are no longer desired.
Lead, what was perceived as lead can become gold.
Yes. And focus on what we desire. Because a lot of times when I'm seeing clients, I'll ask them, well, what is it you desire? I don't want to have cancer and I don't want to be broke. I said, well, what do you desire? I just told you. They tell me what they do not want.
Which is what they end up getting.
What they end up getting because you're attracting it. You're magnetic.
Exactly.
You're planting those seeds. That's the seeds of your life that you're planting. So if we could begin to focus on exactly what we desire and be clear about it. And not that's the money, because they always say, well, I need $1 million. I said, well, do you know anything about taxes? You better talk to Billy because the tax man is coming. It's not going to be $1 million when they get done with you. But the focus is what is the end result? Or what is your journey? What is your what? And then your why becomes your fuel. Why? It's to conquer your voice. To be able to speak clearly, to focus on what you desire and say exactly what it is. So, and I'd like to ask you this, Billy. I've been studying the flower of life for a long time. It's been my thing, this flower of life. And I was in electronic school, and the teacher started talking about the toroidal transformer. Of course, most of the time in class, I'm looking at bees. I'm only into college because my father said, you gotta go to college.
Right.
You'll be nothing without college. So I'm here so I could be nothing. So the bees were talking to me. And I'm thinking about, and I watched them fly at one point, and they were doing this thing like a spiral. These two bees kept doing this thing.
Right.
I was like, there's something about these bees. And then I finally hear the teacher, because usually the teacher's talking, and it's like, well, and suddenly he says, and then there's a thing that we use in electronics called the toroidal transformer. And it creates this spiraling energy, and there's this energy as above, so below. And I was just, stop. I heard nothing else. He kept talking. I was like, a toroidal transformer. The reason why I was interested in this, because he said the toroidal transformer could be used in amplifiers to project bass notes miles away. I was like, wait, bass? And like, I need I'm thinking about music.
Right.
In the toroid, I got stuck there. And I realized that the toroidal transformer had to do with the flower of life. And I'd like to say, I've heard a lot of things that you've said, Billy. And it seems like when we talk about the Merkaba, We talk about the star tetrahedron. It keeps leading me back to the flower of life. I mean, even the logo on my products is the flower of life.
Right.
You know, you see, and it's balancing what's in the bottle, just seeing it and being aware of it.
Right.
So could you speak a little bit about the flower of life and how it ties into the frequency and sound, and also possibly into that fifth chakra?
So the flower of life is really amazing. I discovered it about maybe only 10 years ago. And when I looked into it, it was just really, it like pulled me in. And I was like, what is this thing? So I started analyzing it. I saw it on some ancient symbols. I saw it on the floor of ancient temples. I saw it etched into stone. And I'm like, these cultures are looking at something that's super ancient, but at the same time, we're just now rediscovering this design. And so when I looked into it deeper, I discovered the Vescopiscis, which is the intersection of the circles. And I looked into the ancient cultures talking about that was the womb of creation. And so where these circles intersect and create the Vescopiscis, I started hypothesizing. I said, I wonder if this is where the energy comes from that is emanating into this universe, the creation of this universe. Could each one of these things be part of the source of a microscopic black hole of some sort? And the deeper I looked, it seemed like this flower of life, it was everywhere. It was at every Planck unit in space-time around us, and that it was the reason or the cause for the energy that has helped us to create this light matrix. It is the source. In my opinion, it's the face of God. When people think that God is this man flying around in space with a magic wand, I think that the flower of life is the actual face of God, that God is a frequency. This thing creates a specific frequency that harmonizes and helps us to create this entire matrix that we're living in. It's part of the actual code of the matrix, or the code is coming through it in some way, in my opinion. And when you look at it as it relates to the way frequency and vibration is always as above, so below. And when you begin to talk, when you begin to speak, you're creating these cymatic frequencies. We're only mimicking and duplicating what this flower of life is already doing. And we just talked earlier about the fact that they just discovered this new corridor at the Great Pyramid, which looks just like the throat chakra, right? If you overlay it, it's the same thing. The shape, the dimensions, even the back part, right? It's all, again, the Great Pyramid is telling us the secrets of creating reality, manifesting, obtaining higher levels of consciousness, speaking your destiny into existence. We can actually, through understanding the flower of life and then taking it from as above, so below to ourselves, we can say, okay, now we're creating the same frequencies. We have the power over our reality through vocalization, through creating frequencies. We're not really speaking, we're just creating vibrations.
Exactly.
Those vibrations are encoded with what? Data. Data from where? Consciousness. Just like a cell phone, it's connected, right, to a microwave tower, microwave frequency that's going to a tower. That microwave, or that beam of light that's connecting all of our mobile devices, is encoded with data. We keep duplicating the same thing that we're experiencing and we're living in this universe. We keep making copies of what we're already doing and what this flower of life is doing. It's sending in this energy that's encoded with data, and we're doing the same exact thing. All right, so we connect our phones to this tower through a beam of light, and then we drop zeros and ones on that beam of light, which ride up to the tower, ride to the next city, come down to the other person's device. It lights up, and now they get the message riding on a beam of light. Vibration and frequency is all the same. Every time we speak, we create vibrations. We send conscious data into that frequency, and it rides out, and somebody hears it and decodes it. And so this is the same thing happening over and over again. But if all goes to the smallest level, to this flower of life source. And I know that it's been talked about that there's, inside of a flower of life, you can create this 64 grid tetrahedron. And at the center of that seems to be this 0-point energy source where unlimited power possibly exists. So it's really what's driving. Could this flower of life energy be the source of the dark matter, right? This dark energy that they're talking about that's permeating throughout the universe? It's possible.
Well, mathematically, nothing to the power of nothing, or 0 to the power of 0, doesn't equal 0. It equals 1.
Beautiful.
So nothing to the power of nothing equals everything, and we're all just separations or divisions of that everything.
the silence.